Cartoons and animation are a special medium when it comes to televised, online, and cinematic media. They are given much more liberty to be creative and expressive with the stories they try to depict. And with that, each episode can give them a chance to explore any number of plots that can ultimately only exist within particular episodes. And with today's subject matter, we are going to be discussing some episodes of popular animated series in the last few decades that utilize the zombie genre to a certain degree. Whether it be parodies of popular zombie movies, generic tropes even a 5-year-old would understand about the Reanimated, or just checking off the checklist of stories that they would have to eventually use. Since this channel is primarily focused on covering zombies anyways, I figured that maybe I can discuss zombie episodes of cartoons. So this week we are discussing 10 zombie episodes in cartoons. Now, I'm not going to be putting these episodes in any particular order, but generally going over the premise of each episode, how they utilize the zombie trope, and how well it works with their respective series. And what better way to start than with the longest running cartoon of all time? And this is actually a double take, since The Simpsons have covered zombies, or infected, twice. The first of which was from Treehouse of Horror 3, titled Dial Z for Zombie, where in a sort of hybrid of Pet Sematary and Evil Dead, a book of evil and magic leads to an outbreak of high parody proportions. Bart has to read a real book for his book report instead of an alphabetic pop-up book, and ends up in the school's occult section, a staple in American education systems. After closing the book on his next literary adventure, Bart takes his intensive reading to Lisa's room, where she laments her passed-away cat, Snowball 1. Bart openly suggests bringing her back as a zombie with dark magic, and even discusses how zombies work. When the 90s America bad boy chants the apparent evil terms Trebek, Walmart, while wearing the vinyl cover of Michael Jackson's Thriller on his head, he brings back the entire dead population of Springfield, plus somehow historical figures from around the world, like Shakespeare, leading to the hospitable demise of Ned Flanders.
I thought you were dead and...
as well as Principal Skinner and Krusty the Clown, which apparently these zombies can still speak properly, but with a not so cunning new craving for gray matter.
Send me your parents' brains. All right, parents' brains on a 3x5 card.
Homer fails to barricade a main entrance and sacrifices himself, or at least he tries, only to leave the horde hungry. They fight their way to the library, which leads to one of my favorite scenes from the series ever.
Hey, Simpson, I'm feeling a mite peckish. Mind if I chew your ear?
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
He was a zombie?
Barney's looking to fit in with the undead and proves that biting a zombie back doesn't turn you into a zombie. They retrieve the book, and apparently you can stop a zombie apocalypse by chanting the names of condom brands?
Trojan, Ramses, Magnum, Chic.
Well, I guess there's extra protection in it. The episode ends in a Shaun of the Dead-like fashion, but with the zombies going back into the graves, there's some pretty comical instances of them mixing each other's names up, but in the very end of it all, the family, being the true definition of a zombie, gawking at the television, despite being revealed not being zombies.
Man, fall down. Funny.
Now, Treehouse of Horror XX features a segment called Don't Have a Cow, Mankind, based on 28 Days Later, but instead of rage-infected monkeys starting the pandemic, we have burgers made from cows eating cows, called the Burger Squared.
The math checks out.
Based on the mad cow disease from years back. Not soon after the burger launch, Springfield is once again plunged into a zombie apocalypse. They're infected, Zach. And much like how I am during the corona outbreak, Bart is staring out the window, gawking at fast food. Bart retrieves a perfectly pristine Krusty Burger and eats it savagely for his family to find and fear his possible infection. Which, really, Bart, you personally saw the burger caused all of this. Why would you try that? Well, at least it's less stupid than a kiss causing a national pandemic. Luckily, Bart is immune, and the family decides to take him out to have a vaccine made to counteract the Muncher disease at the advice of the late Dr. Hibbert. While trying to get to their car in a similar light to Left 4 Dead, Homer's loud breath of relief alerts the horde
Oh man, that breeze feels good.
and causes the residents of Springfield to flood into their home, even having Rainier Wolfcastle, the generic zombie movie badass, get instantly killed off. Apu shows up and ends up becoming the 28 weeks later badass, explaining that because of his vegetarian and convenience store lifestyle, that he
Did not consume any tainted burgers, and as a convenience store owner, I am armed to the teeth.
When they get stuck on a wall of cars, Apu volunteers to go out and push in a similar vein to the sacrifice scene from 28 weeks later. Except this time around, Apu actually expected them to stop for him so he could get back in. So he dies to a ravenous horde of people, much like what happened to his character in real life. The family is forced to walk when their car is out of gas when Homer runs into his boss, Mr. Burns, to play with his dead body, only to be bitten and turned. Well, kind of. Homer displays symptoms, but just spouts brains a bunch without attacking.
I think the better brains is, are you brains of brains?
But for no discernible reason, Homer never attacks them, and the family is able to cage him even though he wasn't attacking them? I mean, how were they able to even make this cage in the first place? They were just figured out about this safe haven. They walk 10 feet and the cage magically appears. I realize it's a cartoon, but still. Maybe alluding to Bart's immunity since they're, similarly genetic since they're family or something. Once they arrive at the safe zone, Marge says Bart is the chosen one, and everyone just bows there automatically, apparently knowing what that actually means. The US military says they can save mankind by eating Bart's flesh, with Marge making a jab at Christianity.
What kind of civilized people eat the body and blood of their savior?
The ultimate solution is having Bart bathe in their soup that he serves to the public, with extra nuts for his sister. Although these segments are less than 10 minutes apiece, they deliver a great experience, having origins from dark magic to tainted burger meat. The zombies are very much undead versions of their living selves and play with the surviving characters well. From Flanders politely asking to eat Homer and promptly being blown away by the unaware neighbor, or the barflies hauling away Moe as he tells them,
Might want to wash me before you eat me.
Thank you.
when the zombies of Treehouse 3 are called back to their graves. Most just calmly head back, with even some hilariously mixing up the basic name of John Smith
Excuse me, I'm John Smith.
John Smith, 1882.
My mistake.
Treehouse 20 felt like the zombies we are more used to while mocking the generic plotline of so many zombie epidemic movies, having an immune person being the potential for a cure or vaccine in the main cast. The Simpsons, despite some lackluster recent seasons, has retained themselves as kings of parody, and these two segments are no omission. Now, some of you may not remember a claymation series that aired on Adult Swim back in the mid to late 2000s.
Adult Swim.
Lampooning hardcore Christian culture and a direct parody of the series Davy and Goliath. That was called Moral Orel, where the main character Orel deals with episodic dilemmas when it comes to innocently proving his faith to himself and his family, with some less than Christian results usually following.
I'll smoke the crack.
I hope you love it as much as I love you.
In the episode, The Lord's Greatest Gift, the pastor gives a sermon about using life to one's fullest, and that it is actually a sin to throw one's life away. Orel interprets this passage differently and assumes that every dead person is actually sinning because, well, they aren't alive and they're not appreciating life. And Orel now thinks a corpse is basically spitting in God's face. Orel starts to think heavily about the sermon with his best friend Doey.
Reverend Putty's sermon today sure made me think.
Orel, you know you're not supposed to think when it comes to God and faith.
And while walking through the town cemetery, Orel convinces Doey that his own grandfather is sinning in his own grave. Fearing God's wrath, they head to the library and retrieve the Necronomicon. Justifying his blasphemy, Orel and Doey dig up the dead body of his grandfather in order to resurrect it. Opening the coffin, they are overwhelmed with the stench of a decaying corpse. But they assume it's not because of his dead body, but because he's been wearing the same underwear for way too long. So, what do? They strip his dead grandfather down to his birthday, I guess you should say death day suit. Either way, they have this old man naked, basically saying,
That's another sin. Mom says cleanliness is next to godliness.
And once they bring him back to life, he can go up and put on a new pair of clothes so he won't smell. Once the dead grandpa is buck naked, Orel chants the black magic of the Necronomicon.
That doesn't sound very Protestant, Orel.
Well, at least it's not Catholic.
Catholic.
And creates their first zombie. Rejoicing at their miracle, Officer Ochunk arrives at what looks like a grave robbing as the grandfather lumbers around. Hilariously, the grandfather, before attacking, says a quick prayer and then eats his brains out. Orel, seeing another dead body in the officer, suggests stripping the officer down because his clothes were now bloody and to bring him back, which leads to a non-stop chain of incantations that eventually has their town infested with the undead, all praying before they sink their teeth in the living. Eventually, Orel's father finds Orel stripping down a naked woman to reanimate her, and quickly takes Orel back home for a scolding. You would think he would ask him why he's turning people into zombies, but instead, he asks,
"Where in this book does it say the dead have to be naked?"
and proceeds to say that nudity is a sin, not even caring that his son has started a zombie apocalypse as he cites the apparent 11th commandment.
"Thou shalt be ashamed of thy natural anatomy."
Orel's dad basically says people are afraid of the undead because they are naked sinners, and he apparently wasn't wrong. So they seek to right their wrongs and charitably make clothes for the walking corpses. The zombies remain alive, and people blissfully let themselves be eaten alive, happy that the nudist epidemic has been quelled. This episode was brilliant in its use of Orel's misguided attempt at trying to save the dead from sin. A quite original story and funny meta-commentary on a child's fear of sinning going overboard, and the zombies praying before eating is a unique touch, and having them all naked to attempt to remove their stench was even greater. I'm sure the zombies don't mind suiting up if it means a free meal. Next up, if you are an emo or goth kid that shopped at Hot Topic, you probably know this next series, Nickelodeon's Invader Zim, focused on a puny alien Zim and his robot Gur, attempting to take over Earth. It wasn't any stranger to weird and bizarre plots, but in the episode FBI Warning of Doom, Gur is watching a rented videotape. Yes, we had to borrow movies from stores for short periods before everything was easily available from the comfort of your nude binge-watching party at home. God, I feel like a boomer just saying that. The video store calls saying the tape is 20 days overdue, and they will
Late fees.
if they don't return the tape by tomorrow. Zim sees the FBI warning that plays at the beginning of any physical movie releases and assumes it is a warning that they are being spied on. So he ventures to the mall late that night to return it before the ramifications occur. Breaking into the mall, Zim faces an overly protective security guard and his overly powerful security system that has to be beyond a normal mall's budget. Zim is captured and thrown into a holding room with other shoplifters and employees that slept past the mall's operating hours. One of the prisoners says every few days one of them is taken away.
I say he takes them and turns them into horrible zombie soldiers in that new zombie lab they just put in out back.
Although it does sound like a conspiracy theory, once Zim escapes by tricking them to make a human pyramid, the security guard unleashes the said zombies. Now this is a very brief period in the episode, but notable nonetheless. The zombies released in a mall start shambling around and do nothing. They don't attack or go after Zim or the guard. They just wander around aimlessly, possibly alluding to Dawn of the Dead, and not Dead Rising, since Dead Rising wasn't even out at this point. This episode aired in 2002. The zombie aspect is kind of out of nowhere and isn't a major plot point, with the main focus of the plot revolving around returning a rented movie, but the fact that zombies are beneath the mall, ready to be unleashed to do absolutely nothing but wander around, is kind of more of an allusion to Dawn of the Dead's deeper meaning of people being the true mindless zombies, wandering a mall serving no purpose as they wander forth.
No, that's okay.
Now we're in the territory of cartoons I have never watched, and one of those being Gravity Falls, focused on Grunkle Stan and his visiting great-nephew Dipper and great-niece Mabel, who take on the town of Gravity Falls' numerous mysteries and paranormal activities revolving around a mysterious journal. There are spoilers ahead for this, so don't at me complaining. In this specific episode titled Scarioki, Stan looks to using and copying the book right after the town was attacked and almost destroyed by turning on what seems to be an unknown alien technology. The US government detects this outburst and comes investigating amidst the town's celebrations, but they do slink away as the kids decide to leave the book alone for once before they metaphorically raise the dead.
I'm not gonna raise the dead. I just need a chance to show those agents my book.
But we wouldn't be covering this episode if they didn't. Stan hides a business card handed to them by the agents, but Dipper digs it up anyways to inform them of the book. When they arrive, Dipper shows them the not-so-but-really Necronomicon with the agents thinking it is just junk from a gift shop.
Leprechaun? I can't be the only one that thinks that's not funny.
I can confirm. Not funny.
And begin to leave, thinking it was all just stories of an over-imaginative child. Desperate to make them believe, Dipper chants an incantation that creates fissures that erupt forth the living dead. The almost Fallout ghoul-looking creatures with extra green pus drag the government agents away, but leave the kid alone because television does not allow violence against kids. As the town is overwhelmed, we get an accurate look at the generic, overly confident YouTube comment that thinks they can survive a zombie apocalypse.
I've been training for this moment my whole life. With all the horror movies I've seen, I know literally everything there is to know about how to avoid zombies.
And it's
Yeah, that's you. And definitely me with my sitting at a computer 24/7 looking self. Seuss shows what happens when you become infected, literally just becoming a brain-craving version of yourself that can communicate and utilize tools and critical thinking.
I taught the zombies how to get into the fuse box. Among these dudes, I'm like a genius.
The kids are backed into a corner until they are saved by their Uncle Stan, as they are all forced to retreat to the shack's attic. Uncle Stan admits to not being dumb to the supernatural occurrences of the town, as they discovered that the book's blank pages are actually written in invisible ink, revealed by blacklight. And the weakness of the zombies is discovered to be 3-part harmonies? Coincidentally, Mabel had been wanting to sing karaoke with her reluctant family the entire episode. In a weirdly similar fashion to Mars Attacks' ending, the trio's vocal synchronization ends up causing every zombie's head to explode. The epidemic is quickly quelled with a lot of popping going on, and since the zombie Seuss went away to watch TV and did not hear this, he is taken away with an apparent cure to zombification, including formaldehyde and cinnamon. The credits roll with the government agents somehow still alive and not zombified for some reason. So the zombies of Gravity Falls are pretty strong, and if they were able to zombify more than just one person in the episode, it could have been a much bigger problem. But I don't think Disney wanted the heads of recognized human characters exploding in any degree. So that's why we probably were stuck with unknown dead bodies. They are still prone to dismemberment and generally can be pretty creepy. But in order for this to be kid-friendly, they couldn't have them shooting up the zombie hordes. So Mars attacking them with triple harmony was a bit more family-friendly. You would think 3 people running away screaming in harmony would possibly make this head-popping happen. But hey, who knows?
taking over tonight. Oh, girls do what we like. Oh, we're taking over.
There's 104 days of summer vacation.
Another series I had never attempted to watch before this video being yet another Disney animated series from the late 2000s to early 2010s.
Cause Phineas and Ferb are gonna do it all.
In the two-part special Night of the Living Pharmacists, the evil mad doctor aims a repulsinator right at his brother, who happens to be the mayor, during the ribbon cutting of a new water tower. The device's purpose is to turn any target into the most revolting, vile, disgusting, well, any word that could be interchangeable with repulsing.
So abominable, so disgusting, so hideous, so noxious, so grotesque, so ghastly. Anyway.
After some side stories about kids bouncing around and teenage girls watching foreign films to feel smarter and more culturally inclusive, Doofenshmirtz, not paying attention to the overabundance of electricity he is using, fires the laser, turning his brother into him. Except completely mindless and only saying a few words.
Lots of me.
And when these imposters touch someone else, they are completely changed into another brain-dead clone instantly. Lumbering around like a bunch of Romero-esque zombies groaning the words, "lots of me," the town soon gets swept up in the madness. When the kids have a run-in with the pharmacists, one kid is touched, but not changed, akinning back to earlier in the episode where they rubberized their bodies so they could bounce around. Ferb says the rubber could be acting as an insulator and protection against the physical infection, considering the means of transmission is through electrostatic charge. Now this next part made me fanboy pretty damn hard, as the Action News reporter Don Adadad looked extremely familiar. After researching, yes, it was in fact the likeness and even voice of the late great George A. Romero, and even his character's name is Don Adadad, or Dawn of the Dead. Oh yeah! Cameo aside, the pharmacists end up taking over everything and even take to reporting the news, weather, and traffic, which I do as my other job outside of YouTube. Doofenshmirtz does a musical number reveling in his massive numbers while the kids head back home to fix their machine and rubberize themselves again. Perry the Platypus escapes his containment and fights off the horde of pharmacists with plungers until he is finally grabbed, ending part 1. Part 2 starts off with the pharmacist that grabbed Perry actually being Doofenshmirtz, voicing his annoyance at the brain-dead masses of himself roaming around, but forgets his daughter is in the building and is vulnerable to being touched. Ooh, I didn't really phrase that correctly, did I?
What an awkward situation.
The kids are also trying to find their friend, who went out and alone to get across town through the thick of the horde. And holy shit, I said enough of the cameos, but oh my zombie Jesus. This cameo is so obvious, but I'm still dying. Shaun and Ed from Shaun of the Dead.
That doesn't even make sense.
I suppose I didn't really think that through.
And that's their actual voices. Bravo to the writers for bringing in the best that zombie cinema has ever made. And bravo twofold for jumping ahead of me by having Shaun criticizing.
You get touched by a pharmacist, you become a pharmacist. I mean, you can't just grow a lab coat. Infects my... Are you insinuating that my clothes are alive?
Glad to have Shaun correcting the writers so soon after I praised and criticized his movie. Now the kids appropriately suit up in the most rubber they can get and run into a group of animals that are horrible hybrids of the pharmacists with a more violent nature, including an owl, pig, monkey, and goat, possibly as references to the avian flu, swine flu, the rage virus from 28 Days Later, and the goat. Well, I got nothing for the goat. Perry saves them as the pharmacist horde turns on their creator. The teenage girls speak and act their generic horror movie tropes.
I'll run off to check out an obscure noise in the kitchen. I'm going to slowly walk backwards into a dimly lit room.
Before turning, and the kids gather together to devise a plan to stop the pharmacist pandemic by scaling the evil corporate building and stopping the source. Funnily enough, the scouts dress themselves as pharmacists to blend in, just as much as The Walking Dead or Shaun of the Dead did to avoid detection. They also make it to the building before being exposed and turned. As typical horror action films go, the side characters start falling one by one in either unfortunate or heroic circumstances. Doofenshmirtz and Perry crash land on the Evil Incorporated rooftop as the kids and teens arrive there as well. The two groups, often not seen together, deduce that water would neutralize the static electricity in the Pharmacists. And thankfully, a new water tower was just built overhead right before all this started. They make their way to the water tower via grappling hook as the last characters turn before Doof's eyes. The hook breaks, they start to climb. Phineas and Ferb both turn, leaving only the stalwart Fireside Girl to save the day. But she also turns, and the series ends on a very depressing note. No, not really. She hits the button, water goes everywhere, and everyone turns back to normal, which Sean again exclaims,
I still say this makes no sense at all.
I know, right?
The episode ends with them exclaiming their town was saved since it was walled off, but the rest of the world is screwed, alluding to World War Z, and it's... Woo, that was a long one, but this take in the zombie setting was pretty refreshing. Although not what you would expect of the zombie type, having brainless dead-eye freaks roam and crawl around and turning others with only a few choice words, it's pretty standard. But the fact that just one touch to your flesh or non-rubber clothing instantly changes you due to static electricity is kinda terrifying in its own regard. And the fact that the main characters all fell victim to the outbreak was not what I was expecting. The numerous horror references throughout and cameos were a treat for adults and horror fans alike that might be tuning in while their kids are watching. Even though we didn't have the typical flesh-eating corpses, this different take was unique and definitely worth a watch, even if you've never seen the series beforehand.
Horror movies. Scary, but so unbelievable.
Now, delving into the late 90s, early 2000s era of Nickelodeon, a pair of beavers would often get into some random hijinks with other denizens of the forest in Angry Beavers. Norbert and Daggett have to be really careful with the names here. Their damn home, well, so much for being careful with the words, is caught up in a flood and has their beds float downstream until they find themselves in a Louisiana-esque bayou. They go into a nearby shack to find burly giant dead men stiffly dancing around while a band plays, all being controlled by a voodoo doll-wielding elderly pop-eyed woman. They ask the thusly named Swamp Witch for help finding their way home, as she eyeballs their teeth and leaves, allowing Norbert to join the zombie swamp band in a ditty that sounds a lot like music you would hear in Boo's mansion in Paper Mario. Norbert decides to cheerfully keep playing music because you know he just vibing, as Dag decides to leave, only to find their beds are being hauled away. The Swamp Witch also says she needs beaver teeth as a final ingredient for her ultimate potion, with their underling being a gator wearing a fancy polo. Yeah, I don't know. I guess this gator's into G-moofs. Grandmothers, I wouldn't She makes voodoo dolls of the two beavers and lures one of them to her in order to extract his chompers. But after the classic, "Look! A blim!" he yoinks the dolls and runs away. He warns Dag, and they are chased down by the 4 voodoo zombies and seen cornered till they throw their voodoo dolls to get their canoe beds. They are cornered by the swamp villains until Dag slowly walks up and kicks the gator in the shin. That gator just kinda lets it happen, I don't know. The hag fails to grab them as the beavers find the voodoo dolls for the zombies and throw them about like it's a game of pinball. This leads to a boat chase where this swamp-dwelling witch has a high-powered motorboat that eventually leads to them destroying their own swamp shack, kinda like how they took down the AT-ATs in Star Wars. They return home, shelving their voodoo dolls, and call it an episode. These zombies are way more reminiscent of the original zombie type, seen as voodoo servants that don't crave flesh, but just mindlessly obey the orders of their master. Although the zombies and their masters are both on a level of cartoonish stupidity that leads them nowhere but the bottom of a swamp. I do like the idea of a group of zombies playing music. I just wished we had a little more with this idea throughout the episode. I was also disappointed that we didn't see one of them turn into a zombie beaver. I guess I won't ever get to see what a zombie beaver looks like. Oh, there's a movie called Beavers? Can't wait to cover that! In the early to late 90s, Steven Spielberg attempted his own satirical children's animated compilation series with Animaniacs, with one of these segments involving toddler Mindy and her dog Buttons, as Mindy wanders around innocently into dangerous situations as Button chases after her to keep her safe, often getting himself into dangerous situations and falling into pitfalls to keep her safe. In the episode Night of the Living Buttons, Mindy's mom notices an unusual fog looming over the nearby cemetery. Paying no mind to it, she walks away as Mindy follows a frog through an opening in the fence leading to said graveyard. As she chases the frog, the dead begin to rise from their graves. The zombies attempt to intimidate Mindy, and much like me as a child, considering them nothing to be really scared of, despite me being afraid of Chucky, Gremlins, and the Crypt Keeper, which if you want a video on me talking about the things that scared the shit out of me as a kid, let me know in the comments. As she wanders through the cemetery not really scared, and more zombies trying to nab her for a Happy Meal, Buttons continues to come to her rescue, only to get continuously ripped apart by the undead. I guess they're not like the zombies in the Dawn of the Dead remake who just ignore canines. They wind up in a House of the Dead as the zombie outbreak spurs further, even starring cameos of the Warner Brothers and Sister Turned. Buttons attempts to barricade every entrance into the home, but the relentless horde eventually breaks their way in a very cartoonish fashion. When they are cornered, a convenient plot device on the wall is sitting there, and it says to break open the glass in case of zombies. Convenient. Buttons smashes it open, releasing a gas that, you know what, I want you to guess what happens next. Does it A, cause the zombies to keel over, B, turn the zombies into regular people, or C, turn Buttons and Mindy into zombies and spur a new world order? I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it. Got enough time? Well, if you answered any of these, you are wrong, as Buttons turns into Michael Jackson in the music video for Thriller, red jacket, makeup, demeanor, and all. He proceeds to corral the zombies in a Thriller-esque dance routine, becoming the king of the zombies and leading them into a crypt to lock them away for good. While it seems like everything is back to normal, even though we have a Michael Jackson dog now, Mindy overhears that the frog was also trapped in the mausoleum, begging Buttons to open it back up to get Froggy back. To their horror, the zombie curse has transformed the poor little frog into a vile, disgusting, hideous creature, more hideous than any zombie virus has ever created.
Hello, my lady. Hello, my mommy.
Oh my god!
Hello, my honeys aside, it was a quick and short delve into zombie culture that I found entertaining for how short it was, with the zombie designs and mannerisms being what you would expect, and the fact that using Michael Jackson's Thriller to stop the zombie outbreak is something I genuinely did not expect, and as a kid, did not understand. I did like this take in the zombie genre. Now, not many animated series start with a zombie-related episode, but one involving a boy and his talking magical dog did just that, and it all started with Adventure Time's premiere episode Slumber Party Panic. Princess Bubblegum and Finn are busy at the Candy Kingdom's cemetery creating a serum to bring back the dead to be as youthful as they ever were. When the princess's apparent ex reanimates, it and its pustulating green goop thrust itself into the concoction, exploding and spreading to the rest of the nearby graves. The princess notes that they are not completely revived and still partially are dead as they groan about craving sugar, and considering the kingdom is made of candy people means certain doom for any dessert-related organisms. In Emergency Gathering and a few sweet puns later,
Hurry, sweet citizens.
Tree trunks, get those hot buns in here, girl.
the Candy Kingdom is corralled into the main castle. As to not cause a major panic, Bubblegum announces they are gathered there for a slumber party. This faux celebration is to prevent the people from getting scared, which apparently, if candy people are frightened in any way, they will explode? You gotta wonder if horror films and literature are punishable by death in the land of Ooo, because if you get even slightly startled, you're dead. Jake barges in as Finn makes a royal promise to the princess to not say a word about the zombies, as Jake continues to prod about Finn's dark little secret. Finn convinces Jake to do some 7 minutes in heaven with the Japanese rainbow unicorn. Yeesh, the show was on acid, as the zombies start breaking into the castle. To keep the candy people from knowing and to vanquish the undead at the same time, Finn blindfolds and arms everyone, telling them they are breaking open piñatas. Together, they conveniently do not friendly fire each other and kill all of the undead, spilling their guts out, and the living candy people begin to eat the sugar within. So it's apparently okay to eat the insides of a zombie as long as you don't tell people that they're eating zombie sugar guts. When Jake returns from his closet adventure, he is shocked and asked what happened. Finn gives a straight answer since the crisis was over, triggering time to freeze in place. What proceeds involves not breaking promises with princesses and math, yada yada yada. But thanks to breaking the broken promise spell, the simple figure of 4 is discerned to be the perfect equation for the decorpsinator serum that brings the candy people back to life and effectively eradicates the undead, giving full life to those that have died. The zombies themselves were kinda unique, giving them an E rating to wanting to devour the flesh of the living by just wanting some sugar baby, and further making it slightly disturbing by allowing the living to joyfully eat dead flesh. Still don't know about that one. It's not often that zombie episodes end with such a happy note that the dead can come back to life by the end and still not crave living bodies. And the designs for the zombies themselves just ooze a creepy tone. Like I've said a lot, I just wish these episodes weren't limited to 10 to 12 minute segments to explore these ideas further. Zombie candy people would be a great concept for a horrific Candyland board game.
Oh yeah!
This is messed up, but sweet.
And the last of our animated series today to cover comes from one of the most controversial of all time, South Park. Coming from their humble beginnings in the first season, the episode Pink Eye debuted their take on Halloween-themed episodes. And what better way than with zombies, baby? The 4 integral characters, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman, are doing their standard routine of waiting at the bus stop for school when out of nowhere, a space satellite crashes down, killing Kenny in the process.
Oh my god! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
The local morgue takes Kenny's dead body in for embalming, but while the body is being flushed, the mortician's bottle of Worcestershire, Chester Cheetah Wart Fester Flyer, fuck it, you can read the bottle. The bottle of the world's dumbest named sauce pours into the embalming, causing Kenny to come back as a flesh-eating zombie and bite the morticians before marching out of the facility. The next morning, the boys are showing off their Halloween costumes and Kenny shows up rotting and ragged, but the boys are more concerned about him not wearing a costume. It would seem Kenny, as a zombie, still holds his friends near and dear to him and does not attempt to attack them, even as they make fun of his family's level of poverty. The morticians are visiting the town doctor as they start to feel sick, with symptoms including,
well, your temperature is only 55 degrees, you have no pulse, no heartbeat, and your eyes are all puffy and sticky.
This doesn't seem to raise any red flags, and leads the quack of a physician to believe,
yeah, I'm afraid the 2 of you have pink eye.
Going to the school, everyone is wearing Chewbacca costumes, because, you know, furry man go. As Kenny starts to literally fall apart in class, Mr. Garrison tells him to keep his hands to himself, lecturing a decaying child on etiquette. The same sentiment seems to be spread around the township, as the zombies begin to attack the living right in front of Halloween-minded folk. Clyde gets bitten by Kenny, and the school forces Cartman to change his outfit. And let's just say it doesn't get any better. All this while zombies are multiplying in number, only causing the fear of possible pink eye to civilians before they are eaten alive. The costume contest ends with Kenny winning second place for apparently his zombie look being a costume of Edward James Olmos. I don't know who the hell that is. And then Wendy wins the contest for her Chewbacca costume, because in a sea of the same shit, people will always vote for the same old shit. The kids gather around to bob for apples as Wendy dunks her head in for Clyde to start bobbing for Wendy's. Chef is heading home when he is attacked by Zombie Johnson, who groans saying pink eye, trying to use the excuse to seem less dangerous. Chef goes inside, watches TV, and thanks to a report from a midget wearing a bikini, we could see the pink eye epidemic was already spread through half the town. Yet Chef knows exactly what is going on. After Stan wishes his girlfriend was dead over her lying about the costume, the zombies are happy to oblige Stan's request. Chef goes to the doctor to tell him that people are actually becoming zombies and uses his current patient as a demonstration. Only to be told that that guy was there for a routine checkup, not because he had apparent pink eye. The zombies barge in and kill the doctor with Chef fleeing out the window. The foursome of kids go door to door for trick-or-treating, but each homeowner is bitten and eaten alive by Kenny, leaving the rest of the group abandoning Kenny for his non-candy appetites. We see devastation in the background, where zombies are strong enough to lift freaking houses and cars? Holy hell, why didn't I put this in my toughest zombie apocalypses video? The kids end up at Chef's, who is brandishing chainsaws in self-defense. They head to the morgue, where Kenny was embalmed, and discover the sauce was dripped into his embalming fluid. The bottle specifically says not to use it as embalming fluid, so Chef calls the hotline number to remedy the outbreak. Stan plays whack-a-mole with the zombie when Chef is seen turned into a zombie, but with a more sexually driven Chef's lyrics. You gotta love how Isaac Hayes imitates Michael Jackson here.
Don't be afraid. Just because my heart ain't beating, it don't mean you won't get laid.
Chef goes off to read nudie magazines while Kyle calls the hotline, leaving Stan and Cartman to use the chainsaws to eviscerate the zombie hordes into pieces. At this moment, the hotline representative is saying not to decapitate zombies left and right.
Do you understand? Do not start decapitating zombies left and right.
Okay.
And to kill the original host zombie so that all preceding zombies will turn back to normal, much like a vampire scenario. Kyle realizes Kenny was the first zombie and chops him in half. Although feeling horrible for killing his friend, all the dismembered corpses they created, well, they don't come back to life. They remain dismembered corpses, but they're less green now and look a little more lively, I guess. That sucks for them. Everything turns to normal, but it wouldn't be a parody of horror without the integral part of the horror coming back to life at the end to give hope for a sequel. And it's gone. Like I said, South Park was genius in terms of parody, and giving a shitty reasoning for the start of the zombie outbreak being the hard-to-say Worcestershire shot. Fuck it. Also, giving the sensationalism of how Americans assume what a disease is based on first glances and media hype with the pink eye thing, the zombies themselves being OP as hell to work with the construction paper aesthetic, and the killing the original zombie archetype that works with the oh shit moment. Because for everyone, when it comes to a zombie apocalypse, we default to just chopping up zombies left and right, decapitating them, dismembering them, but we wouldn't think that they would actually come back to life if we just kill one particular zombie. The moment where we see the dead bodies turn to normal, yet still their dead bodies being dismembered, that was genius. That was awesome. Despite it being during the formative years of South Park's writing and animation, it still serves as one of the best zombie episodes in an animated series. Well, that covers some of the best zombie episodes of cartoons that I could find. Were some lacking in the undead corpses department? Did I miss out on an episode that you thoroughly enjoyed? Did I get something wrong? Because I always get something wrong in one of these videos. Let me know in the comments, and we may make a follow-up video in the future. If you enjoyed this little read through zombie media, keep in mind, a majority of my channel revolves around zombie stuff. So check it out and subscribe if you weren't already. Stay well.